Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Introduction to Interaction Design. Streaming out live from my studio here as part of the lecture series from UE Bristol. And I see from the live stream we have 40 or 50 people already in the stream. I'd be really grateful if you could just send me a hello in the chat, and I want to say hello to everyone before I start into the meat of the lecture. For the Digital Media Bachelor Program as part of UE, delivering to Shape VTC into Hong Kong and also open to the public. So please do say hello, and I'm going to see what I can send out and juggle everything here. Okay, great. So, Curious, King Chan, Loa, Chai Hung, Roy, Matthew, Raymond, Shuklan Chan, Anthony, Janet, Andy, Yung. Curious is saying the mic is a little too quiet. There's not a great deal that I can do about that. The mic is peaking fine here. If there are continued problems, let me know. I'm wondering if anybody else can hear me okay. Can you give me a thumbs up in the chat channel if you are getting audio okay? And give me a thumbs down if the audio is not so good, and I'll see what I can do here technically. Okay, so Adrian, Nick, David, Kaze, Anthony, a whole range of other people joining us in the chat, so thank you very much. Nick is saying it's okay. I was saying, bumped up to 3 times the volume. I'm hoping you're not getting too much distortion there. I'm in the studio here. King Chan is saying not so good. Bench is saying okay. Angie is saying hi. Hello to Angie. We have a range of building work going on in the studio, which I can't do very much about, unfortunately. So I'm trying to close mic this. We have to run the volume up a lot. Let me see if I can increase the gain here a little bit for everyone. That should be a lot higher now. So Jason and Adrian are saying it's okay, so we'll continue. But if there are issues, do let me know, and I'll be monitoring the chat. I've got a couple of different monitors and cameras running here so that I can do different things for you in this first introductory session. So first of all, I want to say thank you very much to everyone that's turned up for the live stream. We will be recording this, and the chat will be recording as well, so we can revisit this. But please do stay with the live stream, because I can answer questions about any particular things, and throughout this session I'm going to be asking you out watching the stream for questions and to do a couple of things. So you do need to follow as much as you can, and because we're live streaming, there's a range of different material that I would like to show people, including things like interviews with famous designers, other project work. And what I found previously is if I'm doing this in a closed lecture room, I have the legal copyrights to be able to show it as educational material, but unfortunately YouTube monitors the streams, which I found out at some expense. And so where there is material that I want to show you from interviews or other projects, what I'll do is I'll give you the URL in the chat, and you can see it from the slide set as well, which are available online. And I'll ask you to go off and watch the material, perhaps in a side window or pop up another browser window, and then come back into this stream and let me know when you've watched it. So at points I'll say, okay, great, here's the piece of material that I want to introduce. Here's the URL. I'd like you to go off and watch it. and come back in 3 minutes or 5 minutes time or however long it may be. And then I want to have a discussion about the material that we've all watched together. So hopefully this is a little bit interactive. And there's a range of different things that I'm going to ask you to do and ask you to consider as we work together over the next 2+ hours. We'll see how long we go. And this is going to be the first of 4 significant sessions. Plus we're going to be doing some work offline, in chat and via email, etc. And this is going to link into workshops that you'll be doing around interaction design towards this particular module as part of the bachelor program that you're studying. So yeah, Bench is saying, is it a USB mic? If so, there may be a volume knob. No, there's not. And yes, it is, but no, it's not also. I'm using a large Rode near-field mic, and I'm running into a multi-camera setup with multiple screens and streaming live out. But hopefully it'll be fine and it'll work out okay. So this module that we're going to go through introduces you to the idea of interaction design. And in it, we're going to consider what is interaction and how do we design for it. And there's going to be a couple of fundamental points that I want to make to get you to think about, that underpin anywhere that you may go looking at creative applications of technology where people will use them. So the questions and the issues that we're going to consider are fundamental to whatever area of interest you have, whether you're looking at working with audio, with video, in web development, in application development, in games development, wherever people interact with technology. These questions and these techniques become vitally important, making the difference between things that people love and can use and things that frustrate people that they find difficult to use. The material that is supported by these lectures is available online at shape.uedigitalmedia.com. And you can go to that URL right now, and the slide set for today is available online. The outlines and slide sets for tomorrow's lecture and the lecture and workshop for next week on Wednesday and Thursday will also be available online. There are some exercises that we're going to go through hopefully together between the sessions, where I'm going to ask you to try a couple of things out and explore some ideas and come back with the material from those ideas. And there's a range of recommended reading that you can find through the library and from a range of different sources online. And I've made available online here as PDFs. First, which is the core book that I'm recommending, is The Elements of User Experience by a guy called Jesse James Garrett, who was one of the first people really to get involved in the idea of user experience and user experience design, which grew out of interaction design. Chapter 2 of The Elements of User Experience is available free, and you can download it, and it talks through several of the elements that are discussed in the book, which I will refer to. There's 2 short papers about understanding qualitative research and users, part 1 and part 2, and a short paper about physical interaction. You can also download the PDF module specification, which goes through all of the learning material, the goals, the credit ratings, the learning outcomes, and also talks about how we're going to do assessments. And there's a range of further reading that I really do recommend to people, including some very useful elements that may help you in your own projects, and potentially you'll be seeing as you go into professional life, especially if you're involved with development of new technologies or software or web applications, including the Microsoft Inclusive Design Toolkit, which is for producing more inclusive designs that work better for more users. the IDEO activity cards to help interaction designers. And there's a couple of different videos that I'm going to reference in the slide sets today and over the next couple of sessions that you can also come to here from people like Jesse James Garrett, Arul Balkan, Mark Hussenzahl, and Don Norman. And there are really useful links for further reading and resources from the Interaction Design Association, which is an international organization of interaction designers as a community for learning and advancement and improvement of interaction design. The Interaction Design Foundation, very similar name, different organization, which has got some great learning material that you can go through as free and paid courses for different aspects of user interaction, interaction design, user experience. There's a very useful project checklist on GitHub of a range of different techniques that are associated with interaction design and of user experience that talks about how to conduct competitive analysis, how to do wireframing, how to do brainstorming, how to do prototyping, how to get user feedback, how to understand gestural design, and on and on. And from these, not that they are the law, but there are a range of interesting or useful examples that have been gathered from across the web and are updated. And then there's an interesting design kit from IDEO, which is a very well-known and famous interaction design agency in America, looking at their design kit and talking about how you can go through making designs using technology that are focused around the needs of people, how you understand the needs of people, and how you test whether you're doing that at all well. So at shape.uedigitalmedia.com, you'll be able to find all the material that's associated with this course. So coming back to our slide set, we start with this introduction to interaction design question: what is interaction and how do we design for it? So what I want to consider is, what do we mean when we think about interaction? And I want to show you an example first, and you can go to the first URL, which is available in the slide set, and I'm going to play this to you now, and then I want to show you a second piece which I'll do live, and we'll talk about comparing the system. So this is a piece of work that is a beautiful installation that's art and interaction, that's in Montreal, which is a city in Canada, in North America. And I've seen this work, and it's beautiful. So I'm going to stop the video there, and I want you to have a think about what's going on. The system's set up, and there's swings at a bus stop, and there is no purpose, in a way, in a functional, productive sense. But people engage with them, and the swings have behavior, and they interact with them, and they talk about the experience that they have using them. And I want to contrast that with a piece of software that I'm going to show you now, which you can go and try out yourself at Incredibox.com. And this is a piece of software that's been around for quite a while, but I'm going to try and run it out live now. So you can see this yourself at Incredibox.com. Okay, well, I'm really sorry about the building noise. Just for a little bit of clarity, I'm going to show you quite what's going on. So I'm in the studio, and over here is a whole range of scaffolds. With builders crawling about, drilling holes in things. But I'm going to put the noise to one side and keep working through. So the system I'm very happy. Curious is saying, I thought the building noise was intentional. The building noise is pretty intense. So let's see if we can just keep working through the building noise. And keep going. So the system that I've been showing you here allows me to drag and drop audio samples, change volumes, mute things, interact. And work through different aspects of the system. And the question that I wanted to ask, and the reason that I'm showing this is, I want to say to you, what's different about these systems? What are they made of? Underneath, technically, often what we're interested in is what's going on technically. So, what is going on underneath them? The first system that we saw, 21 swings, is this musical set of lights. And in it, underneath it, well, there's some computer controls. So we've got a microprocessor. We've got a microprocessor of some description. We've got sound output, so we've got some speakers. We've also got some way of sensing what the users or the people that are using the system are doing. And inside we've got some sounds that are called by the microprocessor with some software controlling it. Maybe there's a database of some description with the sounds stored in there, and we have some logic that calls sounds out based upon sensors that are detecting what the users are doing, and then it plays it out through perhaps an amplifier and some speakers. And we've got the physical framework as well with the swings in and some lights with a visual output of some description. When we look at the Incredibox system, we'll keep going. When we look at the Incredibox system, we have some software underneath it. We have a computer that this is running on. In this instance, I'm using a laptop. This could be a desktop or a range of different computer systems. But there's a microprocessor computer system. There's some storage. There's a database that perhaps has all these different sound samples in. And there's some logic. There's some software that's been written to call the sounds out. And there's user input. It's me working away, and I have, in this instance, a touchpad, but I could be using a mouse to interact, or I could be using a joystick. The computer system I'm using has an amplifier and some speakers. And there's logic underneath the system that takes my user interaction and translates it through the logic of the system and plays me the samples back based upon what's going on. So my question is, what's different about the two things? Because it looks like both the system in Montreal of the 21 swings and the Incredibox, despite looking completely different, underneath them the systems contain very, very similar, almost identical elements. But the experiences of using them are very, very different. Quite clearly, the swings in Montreal are for many, many people, and they play together, and there's a physical interaction, whereas the Incredibox system is just for one person at a time to use. There's no ability to have something multi-user, and the interface and the control is empirical. I can drag and drop, and also I'm just using one very, very simple action. Whereas the swings, I'm potentially using my whole body, and there's something playful and investigative. You saw people in the video describing how they were exploring the system with the swings in Montreal, and they didn't quite know exactly how it would react. And they were playing with it to explore the parameters of the system. So there was an ambiguity within the system. Whereas the Incredibox is very much about direct empirical control. Drag and drop, on and off. But the difference between the two is not this surface layer. And it's not the components, quite clearly, because they're very, very similar components. What's going on underneath is the intention and the design of the interaction. And the interaction is not the surface layer of the images, or of the sound, or of the graphics, or of the icons, or the buttons. This is a very, very fundamental point about interaction design, is we are designing interactions. And this is exactly the same as the idea of user experience, which has grown out of interaction design. And interaction design underpins what's going on with the idea of user experience, that we're designing the experiences that users have, which is not about designing the aesthetics of the surface layer. We're not interested so much in designing the color of the buttons and that very, very surface aesthetic of what happens when you slide something around or you use a physics model and something bounces in my interface, but it's actually designing the interaction experience, the interactive experience underneath. And this is fundamental to the idea of interaction design, that we design the experience and the interaction with the behavior or with the system, and then how that's represented and how that's instantiated in the world is something that comes after as additional elements in our audio design, in our physical design, in our visual design, which are also elements of interaction design, but it starts from the idea of the experience of the user, or the interaction that the user will have with the system and the behavior of the system. So, interaction design is this idea that we have a discipline that's interested in defining the behavior of artifacts, environments, and systems. And within that, when I say artifacts, I mean things that get made. Environments can be physical, that I'm inside them, and systems can be processes or artifacts with behavior that I can engage with. And one of the things that's happened as interaction design as a discipline has matured over the last 20 or 30 years is that we've seen new offshoots and specializations, including things like interaction experience design, and also service design. The idea of service design, which some of you may have heard of, is that when you look at people interacting with systems, often those systems are associated with things like services. If you want to talk with your electricity company, you could go to the website. You could use an app on your mobile phone. You could potentially have an interface on a smart meter. You could phone them up. You may have a paper bill sent through the post. You could go into an office to engage with the electricity company as a system or a service. And the idea is that interaction designers have moved away from looking just at one touch point, the website or mobile phone system or a phone-in dialogue system, and are saying, well, actually, this is a service and we can design the interactions at many different points so that the experience that you have, the expectations and the navigation systems and the kind of interactions that you can have through potentially the website will be consistent in some ways with phoning them up through an automated telephone system, with how you fill in your bills, and how you interact perhaps in person at a pay point or at a customer service center. So interaction design deals with these artifacts, environments, and systems. And because of that, it's concerned with really three main things. Defining the form of products, which is objects and services, as they relate to the behavior of that. So the idea is that you think about the behavior of a system and then you design the form based upon the behavior. So you don't say, I know what it's going to look like, I don't know what it's going to do. You say, what is it going to do? And then what should it look like, or how should it appear? How should it be instantiated in the world? Interaction design also anticipates how the products will mediate human relationships and affect human behavior. So this question about mediating human relationships becomes increasingly important when we think about how the tools we use change the kinds of things that we can say to each other and that we can understand from each other. If you have a loved one, somebody that you care about, and perhaps you have a disagreement or a misunderstanding, being able to deal with them face to face, perhaps sitting over a cup of tea or a cup of coffee or taking a walk in the park, allows you to really understand as much as we can as one human to another, the situation and the nuances and their feelings, their opinions, their reactions to the things that you do and their environments around them. Trying to do that via Twitter in 140 characters becomes a lot more difficult. Trying to do that via text message becomes a lot more difficult. Trying to do that in an email becomes more difficult. And different mediums that are designed in these products and services change the kinds of things that we can say to each other and our abilities within them. In certain kinds of media, they promote certain kinds of behavior. And you'll see that some products enable communication and some products mediate or control communication. Some of the examples I'm going to show you, the technological projects that have been built actually enable and support people to talk to each other. Others sit in between different people. So a person will talk to the product and then the product will convey that message on to another user, essentially sitting in the middle as a gatekeeper and not engendering communication. So interaction design also explores the dialogue between people and products and contexts, physical and cultural. So this idea of how the builders are working overtime here, I think they've all ganged up and they said, oh, this looks like a really interesting lecture. Let's see what we can do to assist in the lecture. So this challenge of working between products and people in physical contexts is really important. And this introduces a very important, very, very important pivotal word, which is context. And this is one of the fundamental things that we need to think about when we think about interaction design or the design of any kind of technological product. In fact, almost any endeavor that we're involved in, whether you decide you want to start a hairdresser's, a restaurant, launch a new product, open a nightclub, have a record label, whatever it is that you want to do, this idea of context is fundamentally important. So Interaction design gives us a perspective that approaches the design of objects and services in several different ways. We come from an understanding of how and why people desire to use these products or services. We come as an advocate for the user and their goals. And this idea of the goals of a user, what they actually want to do beyond pressing a button or using a service, is actually very important. We'll see this in some examples later on. We also think about gestalts, the design of objects, and gestalts are existing patterns of how we organize and think about projects, think about images, think about things that are presented to us. And we look at them not simply as sets of features and attributes, but as patterns of cognition. And we also think about objects and services by looking to the future and seeing things as they might be, not necessarily as they currently are. So often with interaction design, we will be thinking of a better tomorrow, not just imitating what we already have. Sometimes we may look and question what we have and say, actually, there's a reason why we have these things and they're effective and we'll continue to use them. But also we can look to the idea of a future for improvement, for betterment. So we have these perspectives within interaction design, thinking about objects and services. And one of the underpinning things is the ability to understand the context or circumstances of a design problem and frame them in an insightful way. I'm just going to pop this camera out of the way for a minute and we'll use it. Use it later on. So this is a really important point about wanting to understand problems in a way that is insightful into the desires and needs and processes of a situation. And the other element is the ability to work at a level of abstraction that's appropriate to the situation and model and visualize solutions, even if you're working from impaired information. We'll see later on that actually research is a vitally important part of interaction design. From beginning of saying, there's a problem that I want to engage with to support people through as a designer, as an engineer, as a scientist, as a producer, as an entrepreneur. But going to that situation and saying, what do we actually know? What can we find evidence for? And can we find insights into that situation that allow us to move away from the immediate elements of it and see broader patterns where we can make positive interventions so that we're producing designs that support, not solutions that dictate. The other thing is that we're looking to approach problem solving that involves creation and evaluation of alternatives. One of the things that's important to remember about design is that design is generative, in that it isn't like physics or chemistry to say this chemical reaction happens in this way, and that is the way that it happens, that there is only one specific answer, and that we can look at a linear or a convergent solution to say this is the optimal solution for this particular problem. One of the things that design, particularly within interaction design, acknowledges is that there are problems that are resistant to resolution, resistant to solutions, and that there may be many different but equally effective answers to a particular challenge or problem. Also acknowledging that because we put things into the world as designers, engineers, when we make things, that putting things into the world changes the situation or circumstances that may again change the needs of a particular project or service. So we look at problem solving as a simultaneous creation and evaluation with alternatives, which is why observation, testing and evaluation in a continual cycle of research and development and evaluation always happens. So we also think about interaction design as the ability to establish purposeful relationships among elements of a solution and between the solution and its contexts, which is a bit of a mouthful. Purposeful relationships among elements of a solution. So if we design a product or service, there's going to be a number of different things that it will do or may contain, between functions and features and content that work in different ways for different people. And the idea of establishing purposeful relationships is about building meaning that users can understand, that can build conceptual models around, so that they understand, the people that use your service or system understand how the different elements work together. And then it's about taking that and making it work into a context. So this idea of context, I want to visit for a moment. Context, where we talk about it here, is particularly around the situation of use. Where will the people that will use your system, service, or product use it? When will they use it? How will they use it? Under what circumstances? Which can be physical, cultural, temporal, geographic. And if you think about designing for specific contexts, it really helps you solve some of the problems and answer many of the questions that are associated with the design that you may want to deliver or the people that you may want to look at. Often people say we should be using personas when we design. We should think about an idealized user. I would argue that we should be using real people and real situations to say, this is a real person. They're 17 years old. They're coming home from one particular place to another, perhaps having gone, not currently because we have a significant lockdown and social activities are curtailed, but perhaps they've been to the cinema with friends. And they are catching the last bus back from a part of town that they don't usually go to, that they don't really know very well. And it's midnight, and it's raining, and they have no battery left, hardly, on their mobile phone, and they're trying to find out the information about the last bus, and they're on their own, is a very specific context. It's night, it's dark, the weather is doing a particular thing, we know something cognitively about the needs and the circumstances of that person that's using the system or service, and we know what their goals are. So this idea of contexts, where and when and how and by whom and for what reason, is vitally important about designing. I want to go to a short video now from one of the designers and engineers who was involved very early on in development of many of the underpinning ideas within interaction design. There's a designer called Bill Morgridge who talks very elegantly about interaction design, and I was privileged enough when I was a student to have him come in and lecture and talk about his ideas of interaction design. And interestingly, he talks about his journey from being an industrial designer, a product designer, thinking about the form and physical function of products, to realizing that many of the products that he was starting to make had electronics inside them, had behavior inside them, had software inside them, and there was a completely new arena that he needed to be concerned with when he was designing products and services. So the video I'd like you to go and watch now is on YouTube, and if I can juggle between the different machines, I should be able to get you to watch the video. But if you can go to let me get the URL and paste it in for you. Okay, so the URL for the Bill Morgridge video is pasted into the chat. What I'd like you to do now is go and watch this short video where he talks about designing one of the first laptops and realizing that as much as the clever external form of the laptop became a thing, what was going on inside the laptop became vitally important. So I'd like you to go and watch that video now. I'm going to pause here, go and watch the video, and then come back into the chat channel here, and please give me a thumbs up when you watch the video, and we'll continue because I wanted to discuss and ask a couple of questions as well about the video. So the video's 7 or 8 minutes long, I believe. So let's go and watch this video now. Sorry, 3.5 minutes long. So please go and watch Bill Morgridge on interaction design, and give me a thumbs up when you watch the video, and then we'll talk a little bit more about that video. So I'm going to pause now while you watch that. Give me a thumbs up when you come back into the channel and watch the video. So how are people getting on? So Curious Cat is saying very interesting. I'm glad that you found it interesting. We'll wait for a couple more people to come back. When you come back into the stream, give me a thumbs up to let me know that you've watched it, because I'd like to carry on and talk about another short video from one of the other names that was involved in interaction design and this idea of understanding users and designing these intangible spaces inside physical products. So yeah, Kat is saying, according to my previous research, his laptop was not the oldest and is considered to be more newer of the bunch. It isn't the first, absolutely, you're completely correct. It's one of those different points. People had been making portable computers, not in any sense that we have a laptop now, that needed to be plugged into the mains that you could sort of carry about, but were there was a product category called a luggable. So you talk about a portable computer, but it wasn't really portable because it was actually still really heavy and had huge disk drives in. And I've got lots of old computers here, and I think the earliest one that I have still has a floppy disk drive when the floppy disks were 6.5 inches and it had a TV screen, old style cathode ray tube, little black and white TV screen in, and was the size of like a cooler box, you know, that you might take to the beach, and you had to plug it into the mains. So the grid that he is talking about is this midpoint. So absolutely, yeah, it's not the first, but it's interesting to hear him talking about how, in worrying about the external form of it, he realized that there was this internal world that was vital to design. So if people are starting to come back into the stream, can you please give me a thumbs up, because I'd like to step on and talk about the next example that I want to show you. So I'm going to ask you a question, Kat. What do you have any recommendations of the things that you think were really good examples? So King Chan, thank you very much. Kat, a curious Kat, really good examples of early laptop or portable desktop technology. Anthony's back and Io is back. Thank you very much. As you come back, please give me a thumbs up. Chai Chung is back. So it's really good to see people coming back. And I wondered if anybody had any questions about that video or thoughts about the video. Daniel is back. Shuklan Chan is back. So great. People are coming back into the stream. Alice is back. Thank you very much. Raymond is back. Thank you. So I want to move on. Bench, Hayashi, thank you very much. Now, the video that we've just watched is from a guy called Bill Morgridge, who's originally a British designer, talking about finding this world. Jason Wood is back. Thank you very much. Bill Morgridge talks about this internal world that he finds inside a product that he was developing. And he'd come from product design and industrial design, which was concerned with the form of things, how this chair works, how this table works, thinking about ergonomics, how people's bodies interact with the things that we would design, and designing increasingly complex products with technology inside them, electronic goods. And initially that electronics was very, very simple. You would press a button and a motor would start and a light would switch on, looking at the products of the 30s, 40s, 1950s, and then coming into the 1960s and 70s and into the 80s, we had products with more and more complexity. So the controls on them didn't just switch things on and off, they affected behavior, they became inputs. And we see with the grid compass and as Curious Cat was saying, and other equipment that was coming out at the time, designing the space inside the physical form became part of the product, and the experience of using the product was not limited to its physical surface, to the things that it could do in the physical world. They were actually geared around the space inside, and that space inside would have behavior. And the way that behavior was organized and designed came to affect how people felt about the products, how they interacted with them. Kat is coming back and saying, to answer the question, I'd have to go for IBM's ThinkPads with a butterfly keyboard. They engineered a way more comfortable keyboard that's close to full-size keyboard. Yes, that's absolutely right. They're a really interesting product. The ThinkPad is much, much later than the grid that we were seeing there, but it is a really interesting design. So I want to have a look now at another video which talks very, very specifically about the design of this world inside a physical product. and also the lighting's gone a bit weird. So the green screen is doing something strange, and I will fix that while we're talking. This is from a guy called Don Norman, who was part of the Norman Nielsen consultancy group that started to be involved in designing this new world inside electronic products, inside physical products that had behavior. So Don Norman talks here about how good design makes you happy. And this brings me to a really important point about why we think about the behavior and the experience, in that negative experiences are not good, but they're also not productive. It's not just that fun or engagement or well-designed things are nice. They're actually efficient. They're actually cost-effective. They're actually positive. And at a human level, they're very, very important. So I would like you to have a look now at, if I grab the URL, the video from Don Norman. So I posted the video link into the chat. Anthony, thank you very much. Can you please just take a couple of minutes and go and have a look at this video from Don Norman, which is about 12 minutes long. So I'd like you to watch that. I'm going to fix the green screen here. So it's 12 minutes long, and it's from a TED Talk, and he talks about how and why good design makes you happy, and also about how the way in which design is presented to you actually affects your brain chemistry, which affects your ability to do tasks. So it's quite a scientific, physiological, neurological underpinning to interaction design, and thinking about this world that Bill Morgridge has brought out for us, this internal world and behavior of products. So please go and have a look now at the URL, and in 12 minutes time, come back into the channel here, or flip back to this tab and give me a thumbs up and show me, because I'd like to move on and discuss some of the issues that are raised in this video and talk about how that applies to what we're doing, how it applies to the products and projects, how it applies to the projects and products that you're going to be designing as part of this module and in your careers going forward. So please go and watch the video now, The 3 Ways That Good Design Makes You Happy by Don Norman, and give me a thumbs up when you come back into the channel here. So I hope people are getting on okay. Please watch through the next couple of minutes of the video. Don Norm talking about the 3 ways that good design makes you happy. The view is long, it's 12 minutes, but it's an important point that he's trying to make about cognition and about how our perception and our experience changes our brain function and our ability. So please watch the next couple of minutes and then we'll carry on, because there's a few points that I'd like to make about what's going on. So just waiting for the next couple of minutes. By about 10 minutes past, hopefully you'll have all watched the video and we'll be able to have a brief discussion about it. If you've got questions while you're watching the video, please do put them into the chat. Or if you have questions as you come back, please put them into the chat and give me a thumbs up in the chat channel as you come back from watching that video. So, hello everyone. Hopefully you've been and you've watched the video from Don Norman. Nobuhiro is back. Thank you very much for the thumbs up. Please give me a thumbs up as you start coming back into the channel. And if you can, just put me a little line to say, what do you think about what Don Norman is talking around? He's talking about these different circumstances and how the design of things affects how you feel, and also particularly around this issue that how you feel changes your brain chemistry and your ability to do things. Now, this is not the most important element, but it's one of the elements that perhaps we don't initially realize when we think about designing interactive products. So thank you very much, Alice, Wang Habel, Shuklan Cham, Raymond, Curious Cat is back, Janet is back, Bench is back, I was back. So thank you very much for, David is back and Daniel is back. Thank you very much everyone for coming back into the stream and giving me a thumbs up. So it's really good to see that you're all there. Ha 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 ha, Carmen, 2 thumbs up. So I'm hoping that's a very positive thing. It's a slightly awkward way to do this. I'd much prefer that we were all physically face to face, but ordinarily I would be in Hong Kong right now working together with you and we can do different kinds of things, but we're all having to respond to the situation that we're in. So Victor, King Chan, Tony, Anthony, Yan, Poon, Liang, Andy, lots of people coming back into the chat channel, so that's very, very good. Thank you very much. Hopefully everybody's watched the video from Don Norman. And I'd like you to think, as we did before, we're contrasting things, trying to make thoughtful, useful, interesting, relevant points of thinking with the swings and the Incredibox musical toy. We have very similar systems underneath. But the interaction design of them, the intention of them, is quite different. And they come out instantiating the world in different ways, even though the systems are made of similar things. And we're flipping to the other side of that discussion. We've looked at Bill Morgridge talking about the design of physical products and realizing that there's this inner world inside them and some of the roots of interaction design. And now we're seeing Don Norman talking about how the design of things and the experience of things changes their psychology and our ability to do things, to solve problems. So he talked about this idea of there being a lot more going on than just thinking about somebody pressing a button or flipping a switch or clicking a mouse. And this is really important because as humans, we're very complicated. And there's a lot more going on than just the discrete idea, somebody wants to do this thing. And Don Norman built a model. I'm not going to go into it in great detail, but it gives you an idea of some of the complexity that underpins some of the thinking around interaction design, where we cross out of people's psychology. How do you understand things? How do you perceive the world around you? How do you decide on the things that you want to do? How do you go about making choices about what it is that you want to do? And how do you build sense and make a conceptual understanding of the world around you? And so Don Norman divided this up to say there's the world underneath, and then there are 7 stages of action. And if we're designing interactive products, all our users will have actions. But he said people start off and they perceive the state of the world. So we need to have perceptual affordance. And he talks about this idea of affordance, so something that shows you how it wants to be used. And people then need to interpret the perceptions they have of the world and evaluate them, and then see if they align. Yeah, Kat is saying, please just hold the microphone. I've got a lavalier microphone which clips on, so maybe I'll try that next time and see if we can cut out some of this background noise that we have in the studio here. So Norman says, here's the world. We perceive the world. We need to interpret those perceptions. Then we evaluate what we found. Then we think about what our goals are. And these are not, I want to click that button. They're much broader goals. And then we think about our intention to act. And then we go through a sequence of action. Then we execute those actions and they interact with the world. So he has these 7 stages of action where we talk about cognitive affordance and perceptual affordance and physical affordance. So do I understand the things that are being presented to me? And can I understand how to interact or influence them in this big cycle of intentions? Now, when this comes to more modern interpretations of thinking about user interfaces, interaction, and phrases that have been used more recently, experience design, we see that's largely focused on software. Software contained in discrete devices such as mobile phones, laptop computers, smart watches, smart homes, all kinds of electronic systems around us, even from the humble ticket machine through to an automated bank machine, through to a telephone system, or even lighting circuits. There's a fantastic example that I use in one of the lecture theatres at Lee Y Lee at HKDI, where the lighting switches are not simply on and off. They have behavior in them, and if you give them a long press, they do one thing. If you give them a short press, they do another thing. If you click them 3 times, they do something else. And they have software inside a lighting switch that gives them complicated behavior. And increasingly, we're seeing the role of software put forward, and interaction design is increasing in importance dramatically. And it's continuing to shape the physical structure of the world. And this has come out of ideas of the Internet of Things, which is a very common buzz phrase from a few years ago, but now is really taking place in the world around us, that increasingly the objects that we interact with in our daily physical world, from lift buttons to coffee machines to light switches to our homes, to the devices that are underpinning everything that we do digitally, have software inside them. And as we've seen from our first example of thinking about the Swings and the Incredibox musical toy, they have behavior underneath, encoded in the software. And whilst the writing of the software and the design of the software is hugely important, the intention of the software, what it needs to achieve, what it needs to do, and how the intentions and information and affordances and functions and content within the system are presented to users is fundamental to the success of that system, whether it's understandable, whether it's usable, whether it solves the right problems for people. So I want to ask you to watch another short film, and I just want to watch the first 5 or 6 minutes of the film, because it talks about what do designers that involve themselves in interaction design and in user experience and designing user interfaces think is coming, what is happening, and where might we go next. So I'd like to ask you to watch another short piece of video that I would play snippets of. And I'll paste the URL into the chat now. So this is a short piece of video. The whole video is about 18 minutes long. but I don't want you to watch the whole video. I just want you to watch the first 6 or 7 minutes. And it's a whole range of different talented and skilled designers talking about what is going on with this current age that we have. We've come from the past with Bill Morgridge. We've seen Don Norman's attitudes. And now we're seeing designers from Twitter and Facebook, from Google, from Microsoft, talking about where we are now and the near future. This is a couple of years old, so some of the things they're talking about we're starting to get now. But about how digitalization and software is influencing everything that we have in the world around us. So I'd like you to watch just the first 6 minutes or so. You can take your own link so you can get the audio. Otherwise, I'm going to get a copyright ban here because I'm playing something through YouTube. So I'd like you to go and watch that now, and then give me a thumbs up after you've watched about the first 6 minutes. And if you want, after the lecture, come back and watch the rest of it, because it's really interesting to see what do people get right, how do I feel about it, how are these world-leading designers, engineers and architects from Bing, from Twitter, from Facebook, from Google, from Microsoft, talking about the world and about the world that we're now living in, that you're going to be designing for. So please watch through the stream from the URL that I've posted into the chat. And then when we come back, I want to talk a little about some of the questions and issues that are being raised in the video. So have a think about some of the things that the designers are talking about. About this layer of meaning in the digital world. And if you have questions, please do put them into the chat. And when you've finished watching, give me a thumbs up, and I want to carry on going through the material that we have to cover together today. I'm going to pause the video there. We're at about 6 minutes in, and there's a couple of points that I want to pull out from this video. So when you join us back, please do give me a thumbs up into the chat channel, and we'll carry on talking. So, Janet, Raymond, Iowa, Matthew, David, Jan, thank you very much. You're all coming back. Now, out of these range of designers, we saw them talking about products and services that we recognize from our everyday. From Google Maps, Microsoft products, Bing searches, Twitter, Arduino, mapping companies from Clement Mark, Studio Frog, a whole range of different designers and engineers and scientists talking about how we design interactive services and about how those digital services and digital products and our technological abilities change the world around us and change how we perceive and interact with the world. That we live in the world cognitively, we live in the world by the meanings that we see and the connections that we make between ourselves and our environment and the other people and objects that we perceive within the environment. One of the points that I think for me was a really nice point was to talk about meaning, this idea of making meaning out of the world, making meaning of the things that we see in the world, and trying to differentiate what one of the designers explained is in the trade they call it the chrome on things. That is the decorative surface layer around products and services that are being designed and put into the world. The shape of the buttons, the ability for a menu to bounce when you drag it, the physics that gives things a weight when you try and slide them or swipe them, that often don't communicate anything, and they don't contribute to a level of meaning. They're a very surface experience. They're an aesthetic of the interaction, but actually don't communicate anything about the structure of the product, the meaning inside it, the goals, the content, or the function. And this is a really important thing that I would like to ask you to consider. So much about what is put forward as interaction and experience design is actually about a surface layer. And linking right back to the beginning, where we were an hour and a half ago, of presenting two very, very different experiences with different instantiations in the world, but very much the same hardware and software and components underneath, comes down to the design of the experience that's been thought about, that's actually been designed carefully, and then the elements of how that's instantiated in the world, the look and the feel, has been designed after the experience. And this question of being critical of separating the visual aesthetic and the interaction underneath to start with the interaction and make the visual aesthetic follow the interaction is really important. There's a piece, again, that I'd like you to go and watch, because I want to make these points not by just talking to you, but showing you things and asking you to consider them, is a vision piece from Microsoft Futures. It's their productivity vision of the future, and they do one of these every year or every couple of years. And this is from the Microsoft Office team talking about how we can engage with complicated productivity products that allow us to organize information, organize our world, organize our communication. And it's their vision of a near future. And it's beautifully produced. And I would like you to have a look at this, and then I want to contrast it with a completely separate vision of the future, which presents something quite different. So this is Microsoft's productivity vision, and I think I can get away with running this visually in the background, but the URL, again, is in the slide set. I'll paste into the Slack channel now. Now, the audio in it carries very little narration, and it gives us a product flavor, but I'll paste the URL in anyway so that you can follow along at the same time. So I'm just going to play a couple of minutes of that, and then I'm going to show you something completely different from a small design company based in London. So this is Microsoft's productivity vision of the future, which is a beautifully produced video where they're doing a kind of futurology vision. And also bear in mind that this is potentially a really useful technique for you to investigate and present designs that you're considering without necessarily having to build them. That you can do the design of them and you can illustrate them with short videos showing what they could be like to use in everyday life. So you can follow the video from the URL that I've pasted into the chat channel, and I'm going to let this run a little bit, and you can see in the background there's sound effects and audio, a music track. You can go and see that, and in a minute, after we've watched just a couple of minutes, we're going to watch about 4 or 5 minutes of this, I want to ask a couple of questions of you. So watch this, have a think about what it is that you're being shown, and try and think critically. What is going on other than it's very pretty and everyone has nice teeth? What are we seeing? What are we being shown about the design of the products and how it influences people's relationships and how it influences their environment around them? And then give me a thumbs up when you come back and ask questions. So as you're watching through this video, have a think about what's going on, what is it showing us, what are people doing, how are the designs put together, not visually, but structurally underneath, meaning-wise and activities and goals. Broadly, what are these people doing in their lives? And what is their relationship with the products that have been produced for them? See if you can work out what is the meaning of the things that they're interacting with, and what are the stories being told about the relationships between the people and the activities that they're engaged with. We're coming towards the end of the video here, and we have a bunch of different scenarios. We move from an urban scenario, travel hotel scenario, to an office scenario, and now we have a home scenario. So have a look at what people are doing, how they're interacting, because I want to ask a couple of questions of you in a moment when we've finished watching the end of this video together. So I'm going to pause the video there. We're right at the end pretty much. And I'd like to talk a little bit about what's in there. But I want to ask you a couple of questions first. So please do type away and put some notes into the chat stream of what you think about this vision of the future. So give me your thoughts. Is this a positive vision of the future? Is this a vision of the future, how people work together and how they interact, that you like? Is it something that you perhaps don't like? So give me a couple of bits of feedback. Give me a thumbs up if you've been off to watch the video and you've come back. So please put notes and thoughts into the chat, because I want to have a brief discussion and really get you to have a think about what it is that you've just watched, using the idea of being critical about it. When I say critical, I don't mean being unkind about it, but I mean thinking critically about what is it that I'm being shown, what is going on between the different people and their activities within this environment. And I want to pull up a couple of different points that we might see within the video. So one of the points that I want to pick up in the video is looking at how people interact with each other. In the future, we're still swiping our fingers around on pieces of glass. Janet is saying, after I watch this video, I think human beings will not be restricted in the future. That's an interesting point. Janet, I wonder whether you could give me a little more about that. About what do you mean by restricted? In their abilities or in their individual freedoms? Iowa says, it still feels like hologram is impossible and not sure how those swiping even works. We still don't have flying cars in 2020. Yeah, holograms are very complicated, and there's lots of things that people call holograms that aren't actually holograms. There's lots of things where there are projections in this video. Projections from ceiling down onto the kitchen table, onto the outside of the fridge, and so on. And lots of instances of being able to swipe and say, well, I want to cast this information from my mobile phone onto a screen in front of me. But very few considerations about privacy, about intention, about interaction, and also about the infrastructure that's underneath it. Thomas is saying, I very expect the future can be even more fantasy technology. A lot of this is fantasy technology. One of the things I wanted to talk about was the interactions between the people. There's lots of fancy swiping and screens everywhere. We see, for me, a big separation between people. And all of the communication being mediated by the software, in that our vision of the future is that although in this instance we have a charity concert, a benefit concert with an individual musician, almost appearing as if they were a busker, a street musician, but the interaction around causes involving people is limited to swiping a few electronic coins from one place to the other, even though it's quite clear that these two people can acknowledge each other and interact with each other. It's still mediated in this very, very thin way. It's not people being close to each other. It's people being divided by screens. And this theme, for me, continues where in the hotel, everything is ordered electronically. And within the hotel, every surface turns into an extension of work. A couple of chats coming in. King Chan is saying, I think the future become more like the movie WALL-E, more convenience, but people becoming lazy. Yes, I think that's a very interesting critical point. And certainly it's one that I would like you to consider. You have to make up your own mind about it, but I think that's a really important point. And the WALL-E movie example, if you're aware of it, and it is a beautiful, heartwarming movie, it shows a future where people are separated from each other and do nothing, and are confused about social interaction. And this is a theme that has been a question for hundreds of years about technology, but it is a recurring theme about what it is to be human and work with technology. And Kat is saying, I love holograms. I think it'll replace two-dimensional interface. Yeah, and Jan says, I'm worrying about, can people live without internet in the future like this? Absolutely. Everything is connected. Potentially everything is very brittle. Everything stops working should you have a power cut or there be a server outage. But the environment that we see is that the world becomes work, and that everything is rated by productivity, and although the future looks fantastically exciting with lots of swiping and bouncing, in this example we are seeing how things slide about and disappear and open and close and bounce into each other and swipe up and down. The technology that this woman is working with is no more advanced than an existing book or magazine. It just looks very pretty because things bounce, but doesn't have any particular more meaning to it, nor potentially as much functionality as actually a printed magazine. And all that's underneath it appears to be, in this vision, is a magazine. It's a printed page and a printed page and a printed page and a printed page that we're continuing to imitate, which is one of the things that products like Microsoft Word do, is that they imitate a printed page. And all of the interaction and behavior around them is around working with a printed page. And going forward, we see more examples of this replication of paper. And a particular question that I want to raise is looking at the scenario in the kitchen, where we have instances where the technology is not enabling communication. It appears to be almost separating. And also, this is just a bugbear for me. This is a polar bear, which is a white bear in a forest with no snow in sight, which always has been a little bit of a question for me. But the young girl wants to search for a cake to make. And she's going to do a bake sale, and she says to the system, help me find a recipe. And the system returns 1,300 recipes, which to my mind isn't particularly helpful. And although what would appear to be her father in this scenario is in the same room, there's zero communication between the family other than this very small video call. And to be able to find out what's in the fridge, we have screens everywhere telling us almost nothing. Now I want to show you a different example of the future, because this is the future where everything in sight is going beep, 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 and asking for our attention and giving us notifications, and everything's mediated by the technology, and it's very, very present. There are screens everywhere demanding our attention. Everything is sending us push notifications. Everything is beeping at us. And I'd like to go and contrast that, given that this is a very different vision, but again, it's one of these beautiful sort of future vision short videos from a company called Berg, who work with Dentsu in London. So I'd like you to go and have a look briefly at this video now, and I'll paste again the URL into the chat window. And this is a much shorter video. So this is Vision of the Future from Berg Dentsu, who are talking about media surfaces, and they were given the task of thinking about the future of information. When they call a media surface, is to say it could be a screen, it could be e-paper, it could be any kind of controllable display that can show media. But it's not just a TV style screen. It's anywhere that we can display information. And they considered this as part of an illustration of a journey on a train system. So I'm going to run this now. It's only 2 minutes long, and then I want to contrast and compare these two and ask you what your thoughts are about seeing these two different visions of the future.
seem unreasonable to expect that some of that material it communicates is playful or witty. We know quite a lot about where the passenger will be, which journey they're taking, and even where they might be sitting. And so it's been interesting to explore how we can celebrate some of the most exciting things about trains. And for us, it's this sort of industrial archaeology of the landscape. As you roll through the British countryside, you see abandoned maglev trains and ancient industrial factories and towers.
So that's a short video from Bergdenssu. And I want you to have a think about what they're showing. And I'm going to walk through just a couple of the pieces that I think or I find are important from this video. What they're showing is a different kind of future. And they take all of the media surfaces, these places where we can see information, that start with something like a ticket machine that they show here and continue on. That because the systems that we're interacting with have information about other systems, and they have information that's available from databases, from logic and from sensors, in exactly the same way as underpinning the Microsoft vision, we see databases of information, systems that communicate, systems that can get real-time information. The systems in this video are able to give us contextual information that potentially is helpful. So say, this is your ticket. We know where you're going because you've just bought a ticket there. We know which train you will be taking. We know what time it will leave, and we also know what platform it will leave from. We know how far this specific ticket machine is from the train itself on the particular platform that you're going to be using. So we can say there's 20 minutes until the departure because we know what time it is now, we know what time the train will leave. And we know how far away the platform is from where you are currently on this particular ticket machine. It's going to take you 3 minutes to walk there. So it gives us contextual information. But what's interesting is this information is not coming on an alert that's going beep, beep at me. It's giving me contextual information that I can ignore. It's in the background. It's ambient. And this theme continues. I collect my tickets. And what they've done is they've interjected all kinds of additional pieces into the video that they've shot actually in stations in London. So this is King's Cross Station, a very busy station in London. And they've added in things to say, well, the station itself knows how many tickets it would ordinarily sell. And it can say, well, actually this morning is busier than usual. And so far, as we see, we've sold 13,000 tickets. It's not important that I know that, but it's useful and potentially helpful or interesting contextual information that I may want to interact with or understand. But it's presented to me in a way that folds into the background, that doesn't require my attention all the time. And this theme carries on about being able to use intelligent systems to say, on this example, this train is busy. We know how many tickets have been sold for this train. And we also know probably where the most free seats are. The systems can work out things that are potentially useful for me, but don't need to get in the way. And even to the point of saying, this is how long before the train will leave, which is not just knowing my train ticket leaves at this time and it's that time now, but doing some of the calculations for me that may be potentially useful or helpful. And in the video here, we see commonly the different destinations on older trains that don't have electronic signboards will have printed sheets put on to them for that journey or for that day. And this information will be put on there each day or each journey. And the information is valid for the next 3 or 5 hours or however long the train is going to be taking this journey for. And because the system will know this particular train, and many of the train engines have different names on, in UK railways, and I've seen this in other countries around the world, it'll know that this particular train has travelled on this journey from London to Leeds, which is a journey of 3 or 4 hours, mostly. And it can say, actually, this train has already done 12,841 journeys. It's not important, but it's an interesting fact that we can pull out of the system that may be of interest, but can fold into the background. And as we get into the train, we can see that the train itself, through things like e-paper signage, they're proposing, it can give us contextual information about the circumstances that we're in, using many, many different kinds of display. In these, this information is going to be relevant at the point of entry, and perhaps is going to be valid for the next hour. And when we get into the train, we're flying through the countryside, and there are interesting things to see. And one of the things about a train journey, about this specific context, is the kind of space that one is in, and being able to look and understand and see the context that the train is traveling through can be interesting. And the example that they show of a way of dealing with information in a different manner is to say the ticket machine itself, as we see here, has printed the tickets knowing that this is me buying the ticket, going on this specific journey to this specific place, and knowing what time the train is going to be, knowing some information about the train. And on the ticket itself, it's printed uniquely for me, the kind of train, the model it is, the name of the train, how many times it's done this journey, when it last did it, and also knowing that I travelled on this same train 2 weeks previously. So it's giving me interesting contextual information. And this goes further. This information is correct at this point, and it's going to be valid and is always going to stay the same, so it doesn't necessarily need to be delivered to me digitally. I can print it out as a form of transmitting information. And we go forward, and it's saying, on this train journey, we know that at 9:59, 1 minute to 10 o'clock in the morning, if you look out of the window, you'll see this interesting thing in the countryside, because it knows what time the train will start. It knows potentially where I'll be sitting in the train, and it knows what's in the countryside and at what point in the journey I'll be able to look out and see things out of the window. So this example is saying, printed on the card is a little guide with times unique to me, produced at the point of purchasing the ticket. Interesting things that I can have, or information that may be interesting or relevant to me as I go through the journey. So here it's talking about pieces of architecture, an illustration to say, at 11:30 on your journey, have a look at this interesting piece of antique architecture from an old factory, and there, at the predicted time, is the piece of architecture. The reason that I like this, and I can contrast these two, is this approach to information and interruption. The guide to showing what I could see out of the train window as I travel on my journey through the countryside could be on an app that I could download to the phone. And I could say, scan a QR code and download the app and tell it what journey I'm on and tell it what train I'm on and have an internet connection. And when there's something to look at out of the window, the phone will go beep, beep and demand my attention, and I look out of the window. Underneath it, geographic database, timing, track information, geolocation, all of the same things. But the instantiation in the world, one is very calm, ambient almost, and the information slides into the background. And the other is very immediate. So this Berg vision, which is an interesting one, and just like the Microsoft one, has some challenges and elements of question about how it would be implemented, is very much more about the experience of looking at a train journey and saying, how can we make this easier and more enjoyable using exactly the same amount of technology, but having the technology slide into the background by focusing on the experience of people. So I want to ask you this question and have you contrast and compare these two in your minds, where the information on the tickets isn't going to change. The architecture that we see in the countryside isn't going to move in the next couple of hours. So it doesn't necessarily need to be refreshed every 30 seconds and delivered via some kind of electronic device immediately to me. And it also doesn't need to demand my attention. But the information is there should I want it. So it actually puts my focus and my experience at the center of things rather than the software at the center of things. So I want to ask you to have a think about those things that you see around you that either demand and interrupt your attention or assist you but put you at the forefront of the interactions. And look, just like we saw with the musical swings and the musical toy, they have very similar systems underneath. And the key difference between the two is this design of the interaction, not at the surface layer, underneath the intention and the interaction and how people work with the information and how the information works with people. And then the visual design of it, the instantiation of it, follows this underlying intention, these differences in how we interact with things. And this is the big question, and I think this is the point that I want to really get you to consider out of today's session, is thinking about interaction design and user experience as something below the surface. We saw this with Bill Morgridge. He talked about the external form of the object that he was designing, this laptop as a product designer, and realizing that there was this inner layer. Then Don Norman talking about what happens to us cognitively. Not what does it look like, what do the buttons appear like, but what's happening under the surface. And again, we see this with Microsoft Vision and Berg's vision of the future. So I want to show you a couple of playful things that play with some of these expectations. And this is a simple project from Berg called Nearness, which thinks about this idea of being able to touch and control, and seeing that there are many, many different ways to put things together rather than touching pieces of glass and clicking on things. So this is Nearness from Berg. which is a playful little video, but it illustrates this idea of alternative ways of thinking about things beyond just touching and buttons, which is the paradigm or the gestalt that we've fallen into, with lots of what was referred to in the connecting UI and experience design video, of actually moving away from the aesthetic and the decorative to what's underneath it, which is this point. So I want to show you briefly an alternative vision, and this was done by a guy called Brendan Dawes, part of a Six Monkeys project that he did in association with MailChimp, and he reimagined a light switch and taking the paradigm of one device and applying it to something new. So this is a light switch that has two controls, and you can see it right now. And what he proposed, and again, this is one of these vision videos, very, very short. He's proposed, what if I could switch off all the electronic communication, all of my email, without needing to go into a dozen different devices and filter it all and have all these preferences, just like switching the lights off. It's time for bed. Switch off the email, switch off the connection. And partly this is what's called a critical design. He's asking this question of, why do we live the way that we live, and how could we design things differently? And here's not necessarily a practical product that I would want to go and buy, but it's much more a question about design itself. So I've got a couple of tasks that I want you to do. We're covering a lot of material, and people are hanging in there, and I'm very, very pleased to see so many of you in the live stream, and there's been a bunch of interesting observations and questions. So I want to present you with a question or a task that talks about interaction design. And one of the problems with interface design is choosing an adequate physical form for representing digital information. And this is something that we've seen. The semiotics, or the meaning of physical objects, plays a large role in the affordances and metaphors available to the user. So we've got a couple of complicated words in there. Semiotics is essentially the meanings underneath things. When you talk about semantics and semiotics, it's the meanings that we're interested in. And they play a large role, the meanings of physical objects play a large role in the affordances. And affordances is how something tells you how it wants to be used. Can you understand easily about how it could be used? And Don Norman talks about this quite a lot. And in the 7 modes of action, he talks about cognitive and physical affordances. This exercise that we're going to go through is to think about how you can express and simplify things through minimizing what they are. So what I'd like you to do through this evening, through tomorrow morning, before we meet again, which we're going to meet tomorrow at the same time, and carry on from these thoughts, is to ask you to make a list of all of the digital interruptions that you experience in your everyday life. So think about that. All of the digital things around you that interrupt your life, potentially while you're doing something else, irrespective of whether you think that's a helpful interruption or it's a hindrance. Just to make a list of all the digital interruptions you experience in your everyday life. And then for the most frequent or annoying one, consider how you can make it disappear into the background. How to make simple and effective interface to obtain the information. So I'd like you to think about what interrupts you and how you could make it disappear so that if you want the information, you can get to it, but it doesn't interrupt you in the way that it has been doing. So I'd like you to think, or do a simple sketch, or write a simple paragraph, just a very, very quick exercise to think about how you could take that information whatever meaning is coming, because this is what we're interested in, underneath we're interested in the meaning. And think about how you can embed it, you can make it pervasive, wearable, or think about contextually relevant. So this is the idea of, will it change depending upon where you are and what you're doing and who you are? Perhaps it'll change and be different at night versus the morning. Change whether you're inside or outside, whether you're at work or at home, or with friends or on your own. And consider a range of physical or visual or haptic options. Haptic meaning touch feedback. Explore the expressiveness available. And then tomorrow we would do this ordinarily as a group exercise, but I'm going to ask if people can share this a little tomorrow and tell us briefly about some of the things that you're thinking about. So have a go at this as a very simple exercise. Look at one of the digital interruptions in your everyday life. Think about how you could make it disappear into the background and present the information in a different way that isn't an interruption, but that is still an assistance. So what's the purpose of asking you to do this? I'd like you to think about the examples that we've been through today, where we have technical systems that have almost identical components, but how they're expressed in the world and how people experience them are very, very different. Some have direct empirical control. I can drag this, I can click that, this happens. Others are playful, that have a space that I can ask questions of inside them. Others are very, very direct, or they mediate the interaction between people in that I communicate to the system and the system communicates to other people on my behalf, or they support communication. Sometimes the information is pushed at me constantly in a barrage of notifications, and other times the information falls into the background and is available should I want it, but doesn't interrupt me if I don't want it, and gives me supporting contextual information and understands that some information is vital for me to have at particular points, and other information is only potentially nice to have or vaguely interesting and is of less importance. So layers how much interruption that information has in my life. So the idea of this design activity is to encourage you as a designer to consider alternative ways to represent information and explore designing different interactions. So think about simplicity and expressiveness in interaction design, and think about reducing complexity and enhancing the information potential from small pieces of interface components. So think about what could be improved from this one thing that interrupts you, and try not to fixate on the first design solution that pops into your head. Come up with a number of alternatives if you can, simple ones, and then select and combine which bits you like. It may be from the different videos that we've seen today, you see things that are exciting or playful or you'd like to explore. Physical interaction, ambient information, multiple different kinds of media screens, different kinds of interactions, different approaches to information. Think about how you could apply that to one simple interruption that you see in your own everyday life. And this potentially, for you taking the module in Hong Kong, will be the beginning of an interaction design journal. You should be discussing with your tutors and your supporting staff about how you'll be undertaking an interaction design project, documenting and communicating it, not just in the final product that you produce, but in your initial design research of understanding people, their goals, their ideas, and particularly their contexts, and how you may come up with many different ideas that could equally suit that particular context or use, and documenting them and iterating through. So remember, don't fixate on the first thing that you come with, and try and document and compare the different ranges of ideas that you're coming up with. So what I'd like you to do between now and the session tomorrow is look at one thing in your life and consider a simple way that you could redesign it so it doesn't interrupt you. I'm going to leave you now. We're nearly at the end of the session today. We've talked for 2.5 hours, and I want to thank every single one of you in the stream, with an approach that was taken to dealing with complexity and finding simplicity and approaching the needs of the users of a system rather than the needs of the system itself. And that came out of gov.uk, which is the UK government websites. And when gov.uk started and the government digital service started in the UK, the government had hundreds of different websites for doing hundreds of different kinds of things. And there were thousands and thousands of pages, and it cost tens of millions of pounds, hundreds of millions of Hong Kong dollars to maintain. The information was old, out of date, inconsistent. And if you wanted to find out about a particular issue, you may have to go to several different websites, all with conflicting information, or all telling you only part of a story. And there was an approach which was sort of revolutionary that started in 2012 to say something is wrong. We're building digital services that are fragmented, that are inconsistent, that are complicated to use, that have out-of-date information and are incredibly expensive and inconsistent to deliver. So gov.uk as a website replaced nearly 2,000 separate websites with one. It's been viewed upwards now of 20 billion times and gets 3.5 million visits a day. And one of the things that came out of it was starting by looking at what our design process might be. So I'm going to leave you with this simple idea about how do we design processes and how do we take huge complexity and move it into simplicity. So I'm going to paste this into the chat channel now, and I'd like you to go to this YouTube video and watch this last piece. 3 minutes long. I'm going to play it through now, and then I want to leave with a couple of questions for the day.
Hi, I'm Adi Adiwami. I work at the Government Digital Service, and I'm here to tell you about gov.uk. We launched gov.uk in October 2012. It replaced the two big central government websites, DirectGov and BusinessLink. The idea was to make something simpler, clearer and faster, something focused on users. Firstly, we took a careful look and worked out what services and information we actually needed to deliver. We thought, for instance, that we could probably stop spending taxpayers' money telling people how to haggle when abroad, or how to identify different kinds of waves. We eliminated thousands of pages that no one ever visited. Then we made sure that the information we were providing was as easy to find and to follow as possible. This, for example, is the page on DirectGov that tells you about bank holidays. Now, it has all the information you need, and you'd think it'd be hard to do it better. But looking at how people actually use the site, we realised that what most people were searching for was the date of the next bank holiday. So we put that right at the top of the page, big and bold. We've done the same thing to more complex tasks, like working out how much maternity pay you're entitled to. Before, on DirectGov, you'd need to read all this information. On gov.uk, you just need to answer a few simple questions, and the site calculates the answer for you. In April 2013, we finished moving all departmental sites to gov.uk, together with the sites for number 10 and the Deputy Prime Minister's office. So instead of every government page having a different design and different navigation, every site now looks and works the same way. At the same time, we've rethought how policy is presented online. Before gov.uk, if you wanted to understand government policy on something like gangs, for instance, you'd have needed to visit all these separate pages. Now, there's a single page for each policy, and all the departments involved share the responsibility for keeping it up to date. You can even subscribe to those policy pages so that you're always kept informed of any changes. And if you're responsible for a particular policy, you can find out how often it's being looked at and how closely it's being read. Today, gov.uk is handling more web traffic than the sites it replaced at a far lower cost, and users get to the information they need quicker than they did before. Gov.uk is not perfect, and it's not finished. It's never going to be. It's designed to improve, to react to user needs. We've made thousands of changes to gov.uk, and we make small improvements almost every day. This idea, iterative, responsive change, is at the heart of everything we do. You should visit us at www.gov.uk. Hopefully, you'll see something you like. Something simpler, clearer, and faster.
So the idea that was presented, this grew out of building a system to understand the problem and then to design for it, is straightforward, but that short video encapsulates a lot of the ideas that we've touched on in this introduction to interaction design. The team that formed gov.uk, the Government Digital Service, looked at what they had. They did research, first of all. And they looked at what people actually wanted to do. And then they looked at the contexts that they had and the goals that those people had and tried to design for that. One of the simplest examples is to say, when I go to see when national holidays are, I could see a spreadsheet and the information is there. But actually, most people want to know, when is the next one? So rather than getting millions and millions of people to do that piece of calculation themselves and search through that information, they made the most important information at the foreground and then layered the information. This idea of information layering and presenting what is relevant is vitally important. And then looking at tasks and goals that people had. If you want to look at whether you're able to get sick pay, or in this instance, the example I use is maternity pay, one could read all of the rules and regulations, but that would be relevant to every single person. But if you're looking for issues or questions about maternity pay, you're probably looking for a specific person. That specific person is probably your circumstances. So rather than starting with the needs of the system, they look at the goals of an individual person and say, what information is relevant, perhaps from multiple different categories for this individual person. And then looking at government policy, in this instance about policing and care, there may be multiple different departments or multiple different agencies that are involved in a particular case or a particular circumstance or a particular piece of policy. And rather than having to go to multiple places to find them, it may be relevant to have all of those people contribute to one place that brings all of that information together. So the focus switches here about understanding the context of users, about observing what users do, finding thousands and thousands of web pages that are never visited and removing them to make simplicity, focusing on goals, presenting information, and getting feedback about usage. So this idea of continual testing, so that people that are involved in writing the policy or building information that goes onto the web pages can actually see, do people go and look at this? How do they look at it? And what do they use it for? So some of these ideas are not unique to the Government Digital Service, but it's an interesting place where they brought together good approaches to design and tried to improve them and practically put them together in a situation where it saves enormous amounts of money. It increases the speed of use, makes things easier for users, and makes it more accountable and allows government to understand what is it that people want to do and what are they trying to do. So hopefully the net benefit is not only ease of use, but cost and productivity and understandability and communication. There's more information about gov.uk and there's several more videos, and you can find them in the reading list at shape.uedigitalmedia.com in the interaction design website. So you can go and find that now. What I'd like you to do is download the slide set from today if you can, or you're interested. You can find that here in Introduction to ID, session 1. I'll be putting the refresh slides for session 2 up later today or tomorrow morning before the session. And I'll be seeing you all in the session tomorrow when we'll be carrying on talking about processes and about how we actually do the nuts and bolts of designing things better. Either short and quick or longer and more in depth, depending upon the kind of products that we're going to be making. So a lot of these are going to be directly relevant to you in this project. And all of them will be relevant to you as you go forward in your professional careers to understand how designers, engineers, scientists produce better products that people can use. So I want to say thank you very much to every one of you. If you can, hit the subscribe button and then you can see updates. If you're interested in other aspects of interaction design, I've got hundreds of videos on the YouTube channel looking at creative coding and looking at interaction design, particularly around making novel interactive projects with 3D, 2D. I use a lot of work with open frameworks. So hit the subscribe button. Please post questions into the chat channel, and you can email me at my UE email address, which you should all have been circulated, and I'll be sending out more information. If you have any questions, please do email me. You can contact me through the YouTube channel, just leave comments in the video, put material into the chat channel, and try this design exercise. So I'd like you to go out, make a simple list of all the digital interruptions you experience in your everyday life. Choose one and see how you can make it simpler. How you could make that go into the background, but still enable you to get access to the information should you need it. So that's a design exercise, and we'll be talking about some of that tomorrow and looking at processes about how we can make better designs that people love and that work better and are more effective and more efficient. So I want to say thank you very much. Please do post me some questions now if you have them. If not, I'm going to hang on for another couple of minutes. If not, then I will see you on the live stream tomorrow. Hopefully we will have less drilling from the builders here in the building, and they'll have finished their work that they're doing. And I will see you on the live stream starting at the same time tomorrow. So if you don't have questions, if you have questions, please do post them now. If you don't have questions, try the design exercise in a simple design brief. You can download the slide sets from shape.uedigitalmedia.com, and I'll see you at the same time tomorrow on the live stream here on YouTube. So hit subscribe and I'll see you tomorrow. So thank you very much. Matthew, thank you very much. I hope you have a good day too. Please enjoy the rest of the evening and stay safe and stay healthy. Thomas says thank you very much. Have a nice day. Thomas as well, thank you. Thank you very much to everyone for staying in the live stream. David, Iowa, saying the same. It's fantastic to work with you. I'm really disappointed not to be able to work with you directly in Hong Kong. It's one of my favorite cities in the world and always feels like home coming back. So I hope you stay safe and are well. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you physically in Hong Kong soon. But between now and then, please do send me messages, any questions, feedback, and you can email me direct if you have questions or issues. And try this design brief for tomorrow. And if you're interested, have a look around, explore the rest of the YouTube channel. There's a lot of material on there. And if there's anything that you'd like to see, drop me a line or leave me a message and some feedback. So Janet, King-chan, Iowa, Nobihiro, Alice, thank you all very much. Have a safe evening, and I will see you again tomorrow. I'm just going to hang on and say goodbye and thank you to everyone. Anthony, Curious Cat, Thank you very much. My apologies again about the tremendous noise from the drilling from the builders. Hopefully we've got over that, and we should have a quieter session next time. I'll make sure that we're miking everything much closer, and we'll see how we get on in the future. The video will be available shortly and you can review it, so please do review. If there are any questions, drop me and let me know. Daniel saying thank you. Anthony, ha ha ha. Curious Cat, thank you all very much. I'm going to drop the camera feed now, but I'll hang on. If you have any questions, please do post them. If you are interested, there's a couple of recommended books which are in the end of the slide set, which look at interaction design and visual thinking and principles of design alongside the core text, which is linked from, again, shape.uedigitalmedia.com, looking at the Jesse James Garrett book, Elements of User Experience. So Shuklanchan, Hayashi, thank you very much. Take care, look after yourselves, and I'll see you in the session tomorrow. Thanks again.